Hey, welcome back to the Emerald Knight, Part 17, Mantra Drum. So continuing where we left off, the first thing I do is implement this sort of speaketh the legend biblical talk, in this one sentence anyway. And it's a little jarring compared with the narrative voice that has been implemented thus far. And in a bad way, because suddenly the narrative voice is speaking this way, and unless there's a good reason for it, it's probably best to keep the voice consistent and avoid talking like that. So I wanted to try something, and I tried it, and it turned out to be a pretty smelly decision, but anyway. One thing I want to mention with the week. So, if you'll notice, the ellipses, there's 3 periods after the first week, before and after the second, and before the third. But 4 periods after the third week. So, from my understanding, generally in narrative writing, 3 periods and ellipses implies that there was a trailing off of the idea, or a pause in the idea. And the reason why I have 3 dots before the second week is because it's a continuation of the first, of the same idea. A continuation of the same idea. So we have the first idea, week, ellipses, 3 dots. And then there's a pause, some space between that week and the second week. The second week is in a different line. It's not the same line. It's not even in the same sentence, really, but it's part of the same idea. So I use another ellipses, 3 dots, as a continuation of that same idea, to show that they are connected. And it's not a new statement altogether, or a new idea altogether. It's the same idea continued, if that makes any sense. And then basically the same thing for the third week. It's all the same idea. They're just separated by spaces. Now, I've seen it done in quotes. So if a character is speaking, there will be a trailing off, perhaps. So they'll say something, and then they'll have the ellipses, the 3 dots, and then some exposition will be, it'll cut off with end quotes, and then some exposition will be inserted into the narrative, and then the quotes will open back up, and there will be another ellipses and lowercase letters, perhaps, to show the continuation of that same idea. Perhaps the character thought a moment and then continued their thought. But that's generally, from what I understand, a ellipses implies. It's just a pause or a trailing off of an idea. And if there is another ellipses, set of another ellipses, another 3 dots a little bit down the road, and what takes place after the ellipses isn't capitalized, it's part of the same idea, the same sentence. I don't know if that makes sense. But also, from what I understand, if you use 4 dots, if one uses 4 dots, that is an ending of an idea. It stops. The idea hangs in the air and stops, because really, as a part of like the order of the wording of the punctuation, it's the ellipses first and then the period or the full stop. So that's the end of the idea. The idea was left to hang in the air and then it stops, which implies more like foreboding or intimidating information, and shows that the idea didn't trail off or pause, it stopped. So that's why there's a 4th period, a 4th dot after the 3rd week. And the only reason why it's like a staircase, the weeks, I just formatted it like that because it looks fancy. I just wanted people to know that. There's really no other reason other than that. So, but as far as the ellipses thing goes, I've seen it done, just the 3, and that's the end of a sentence. Maybe it's a personal thing, I don't know, but me personally, I like to, if a thought ends with an ellipses, I like to have 4 to indicate like, oh, this idea is done and it's meant to be done in this way. It didn't trail off, or the speaker didn't pause. This is the end of the idea. Moving on. So there was a bit about the fish, and now here we come into the mushrooms. One thing real quick, the cluster was taller than she. I meant to have that imply that the mushrooms were taller than her squatting, than a squatting Aranthus. So, my bad. But, so I wanted to talk about the fish and even the mushrooms. So, as we know, this is a fantasy story, and we can have pretty much anything we want in it. And depending on who's writing it, and the creatures that exist in this fantasy world can vary greatly. They can resemble to a T, like the creatures, the animals that we have in real life, or they can meander over into the dreamlike and the spiritual and go wild with creature design. I personally like things that make sense. That probably sounds really offensive to a lot of people, but like I don't mean to be offensive when I say that. Like, I would prefer animals that have or creatures that make sense, like their visuals are practical for their environment, and they make evolutionary, physical, anatomical sense. I'm probably not going to be one to go full dream creature, like a like a dragon that has no wings but can fly, I'm probably not going to go that route. Unless I have a good reason. I don't know. But I just want to put that out there, that the creatures that are going to appear, while they may be fantasy creatures, I would like for them to make a certain type of sense, at least in my mind, depending on their environment and so forth. So, moving on to the mushrooms. I I was very aware of trying to stay away from the phallic symbolism, but man, is it difficult to stay away from that in a narrative piece, especially literature, where like anything can mean anything else. And if it's vaguely resemblant of anything sexual, you can bet 9 times out of 10 people are going to go there, because literature has the written word has a particular history with that sort of thing. But I wanted to see some mushrooms, so they're in there, and they will stay. Anyway, I would like, before I get into my next thought, I would like to say that I think the beginning of this section of the story, where it's describing all of this imagery, I think that's really good. When I was rewatching the recording, it had been a while since I'd looked at it. When I was rewatching the recording for editing the video with no commentary, I could really see all this stuff. And I mean, I guess I'm sort of biased, but I don't know, it just felt really good to me. So I just wanted to say that. However, making up lore on the fly, like with that stuff about night, it's it's pretty difficult. So it's like, the thing about it is that I'm not sure what sort of lore I need in this narrative that I don't know where it's heading. And so as I write it, I don't know what sort of lore I'm going to need to fulfill some sort of so as I write it, it's as a working title project, it's generally without a plan, right? So therefore, I don't know necessarily all the intricate little things I'm going to be putting down on the page, such as the sunset, right? The sunset, oh, the sunset implies it's twilight, and then twilight, oh, what's next? Nighttime. Okay, let's throw in some stuff in there about night. It's that sort of thing that can catch me off guard. And it's difficult to create lore before I even know I'm going to need it. However, that sort of thing about night, I probably should have, since it's night, the deity, I probably should have preconceived that before going further into this story. But I that sort of thing just keeps slipping my mind to take time to do that. Alright, so this is the argument that I got caught up in. I got caught up in this, and I really wanted to finish this scene, but I just didn't work out that way. I was encroaching on 4 hours of recording, and on top of going over my allotted time that I give myself, I might have been a little too much editing to deal with. So, unfortunately, I did not finish this argument in this part, and I would say I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. No offense to anybody, but I'm just not gonna live by that sort of philosophy. Like, I can manage what I can manage. But anyway, so I'm gonna be forward and say I stink at arguments, at least in the rough draft. One of the reasons is that it's hard to capture the clipping pace of a live argument in prose with words, just words, not the live action actors who are arguing with one another, just the words. It's hard to capture that immediacy of it. And the energy flying back and forth. So it's difficult to really feel like you're in the middle of two characters who are verbally battling each other. And another reason is that it's more based on emotion. It tends to be, rather than logic. And the logic, should there be any, doesn't really go beyond trying to tell each other to shut up, trying to shut up the other person. That's what I learned in theater. An argument at the basic level is just two characters trying to tell each other to shut up. They may not be saying shut up, but that's their goal, to shut the other person up. And in writing this part, this argument, I was thinking about that, like the emotional shut up type of thought process, whatever. Part of the difficulty as well is, trying to expose emotion of characters who I don't really quite understand all that well. I haven't really found their characters yet. And it's like, how do they really... I mean, I'm getting there, especially with Aranthus here. And, how she's really violently reacting, like, internally to this opposition, especially with things that happened between them previously. I'm getting there, but it's like, how do they deal with confrontation? As of right now, they're both just really angry. But, I mean, characters can react other ways, like they can cry, they can joke about it, or they can be really awkward, or passive. But I was thinking about theater to try to get some kind of inspiration. I was also thinking about Yu Yu Hakusho, which I had recently watched. And like every single argument in that show is telling each other to shut up. Every single argument. So I was trying to pull some inspiration from Yu Yu Hakusho, and even Team 4-Star with Dragon Ball Z Abridged, which I had just recently gotten back into watching. Good examples of writing to just find a good way of doling out this argument. But it still remains something that I struggle with. I'm not good at writing arguments, but it's just one of those things that I really want to be able to serve out on a silver platter every time. because arguments feel really important whenever they happen in a narrative. But with that being said, that's all I have time for in this part. Thank you.